to introduce you all to my friend, Jamie. Sorry, Jamie. I've just learned how to say Jamie's last name properly. I am so excited to introduce you to Jamie Ousterout.
Ousterout. Take the toaster out.
Okay, I'm going to try it again. I'm going to introduce you to Jamie Ousterout.
Perfect. You got it.
Okay. Well, Jamie founded Stabilimenta, an operational strategy consulting firm, in July 2018 to help growing professional services organizations establish and optimize their processes so that they can more effectively serve their clients and engage their employees. She thrives on developing relationships with her clients and working alongside them to achieve even more growth and success for their organization. Jamie spent more than a decade in creative, marketing, and digital companies serving local, regional, and international clients. While predominantly working in client service and project management roles, she always has taken a keen focus on operations. Jamie's worked with clients across various industries, including healthcare, pharmaceutical, financial, technology, and nonprofit. She graduated from Cornell University in 2009 with a Bachelor of Arts in English and History, and is an advocate for liberal arts education because it taught her how to read critically, think deeply, and communicate clearly. Though a very proud Colorado native, Jamie has lived in the South since 2009 and considers Raleigh home. I love that you love liberal arts. I'm really right there with you.
I saw some people snap. I appreciate that.
Like, I love it. I mean, music econ major right here, so.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. I'm super excited to be here. So I know Christina started FYSO to help entrepreneurs figure their shit out, and I basically started it to help entrepreneurs with slightly larger organizations figure their shit out. So I'm super excited to be here and to talk about goal setting, which is one of my passions. I have a few weird passions. One is onboarding, which I'm actually doing a webinar on next month, and then goal setting. So it kind of worked out perfectly that this summer I get to talk about both of those. So really, really happy to be here. I am going to share my screen. Bear with me here. All right. So yeah, as Christina said, I really believe in the power of goal setting. I started my consultancy just about 2 years ago, so I'm very much in the same boat as all of you folks on the phone that are your own entrepreneurs as well. So I'm always happy to chat. I'm very informal as well, so at any point if you have questions or ideas or thoughts that you want to share, please just do so. And then I have my contact information at the end, and Christina has it as well, so I'm always happy to chat with folks after today's session as well. So just to get started, one thing that I wanted to mention about goal setting, I actually am very lucky. My father is also a consultant, and before he was a consultant, which he started about 10 years ago, he worked in lots of different organizations and was president of various companies. And when he started his consultancy, he decided to do a leadership class, and I, as his daughter, got to take it for free, which was great for me. And he's really passed down a lot of wisdom to me, and one of those was on goal setting. I will say I tweaked some of what he did. He's very old school. I mean, he's 71 years old, so he still believes in memos and things like that. So I've kind of updated what he does, but I refer to him a lot, and I feel like the timing of this is perfect since yesterday was Father's Day. So I'll be sharing some, my maiden name is Leonard, a lot easier to say than Ousterout. So I'll be sharing a lot of Papa Leo sayings today as well. So just, I am an operational strategy person, and I love a good agenda. So what we're going to be talking about today is listed here. We're going to be talking about kind of just looking into the past. I know right before I joined you all, we're talking about a goal that you've achieved. So we're going to talk just briefly about that. I was a history major, as Christina mentioned, and so I love thinking about the past and how that affects the present and the future. And so we'll talk about retrospectives, then we'll move into talking about establishing a target, because all goals really should tie to some sort of larger target. I'll share some goal setting guidelines, and then we'll do some kind of fun interactive exercises, and at the end, just save a couple of minutes for next steps. So that's where we're at with the agenda. Any questions before I dive in? All right, awesome. So for our retrospective exercises, I want everyone to kind of think about what was your biggest success in 2019 or so far in 2020? Obviously, this year has been very bonkers, so it might be very different. But just thinking about, it's personal or professional. So just kind of to share with you all some of my 2019 successes, kind of get the juices flowing. For me, I did start my consultancy almost 2 years ago, but I didn't really launch it until November of 2018. I did that purposefully. I was kind of under the radar for a while. So 2019 was my first full year, and I definitely learned a lot, but my biggest success was I was really able to deliver value to my clients and help them be successful. But also I was able to create a lot of templates and things that I've been able to reuse and have made me much more efficient. So that was a huge success for me. And I was able to really network a lot. So actually I met Christina last year through networking, and I've met some of you folks on the phone in similar ways, which is awesome. So that to me, in kind of reflecting back on 2019, were sort of 3 of my big successes. So I know you all just took a few minutes to talk about this and share with each other. Just curious, no one has to share, but does anyone want to talk about kind of what one of their successes in 2019 was?
Bueller. Class, am I gonna have to call on you?
I'll share mine. It's a personal one.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. So I set out on the goal to plan my own wedding, and then successfully executed it in March of 2020.
Excellent.
Congrats.
Congratulations. Awesome. Anyone else want to share? Okay, no problem.
I will. Oh, no, I won't.
Nope. No, please, go ahead, Kara.
It's a Canadian's nightmare. So my company is a B Corp, and every year that we've been a B Corp, we have been the best of the world, and we got best of the world again in 2019, and it always feels, it never feels old. It always feels really, really good to be the top 10% of quantifiable benefit for the areas that we win in. So in environmental benefit and community. So getting that email always feels like doing really good stuff, and it's yeah, it feels awesome.
Thank you so much for sharing, Nora. And that's the thing, goals, as one of Papaleo's sayings is, life is all about setting and achieving goals. If you think about it, it's true. Whether it's personal, planning a wedding, whether it's professional with your B Corp, there's something that's really satisfying as humans to be successful and achieve something. And that's why setting goals is really important. So thank you both for sharing. The next item to think about is sort of, what was your biggest challenge or learning moment last year or so far in this year? There's certainly been a lot of challenges this year. Again, this can be personal or professional, but to me, it's those learning moments that really help you set goals for moving forward. If you don't fail or stumble, you're not going to be able to get better. So, for me in 2019, I set what I thought was a good revenue target for myself. And I hit just shy of it in 2019. And so at the end of 2019, I was kind of reflecting on, well, why did that happen? And part of it was because I gave discounts to folks. I was still new in my business, trying to grow my brand reputation. And so that was a conscious choice that I made. And that's okay. And so going into 2019, I was a little bit more realistic. I also had in my head, I'm going to do 2 of these engagements a quarter, and it's going to be a huge revenue maker. Turns out that wasn't what the market needed. And in talking with my clients, some clients needed that higher level engagement that was higher revenue. Some didn't. Some needed something that was a little bit simpler and easier. So that was definitely a big learning for me. Another big learning that I always like to share, I'm an operational strategy person. So I give recommendations to people. Here's what you should go do. I try and help them implement it as best I can. But one of the things that I helped a client with was to implement a CRM system, which I don't know if anyone on the line has done that, but it worked out, it was successful, but I never should have done it. I spent way too much time. It was just a learning curve. That's not my strong suit. That's not my specialty. So sometimes knowing what you're good at and knowing what you're not good at is really important. So now moving into 2020, I was able to say, no, I'm not going to take on that type of work. It's just not worth my time. It's not worth the aggravation. So I think it's really important, again, to think through what were some of those challenges or learning moments so that you can get better moving forward. So I'm just going to give everyone, and Christina, I think you had shared the kind of worksheets for this. Is that right?
Yes. So they've already gotten into Slack.
Perfect. So it's a Google Drive. You can feel free to kind of, copy the spreadsheet, create your own. If you want to write it down on a notebook, I also am kind of a paper person. So if you want to write it down in a notebook, that's totally fine too. And we won't spend too much time on this. I just think it's nice, again, to reflect on kind of the past, both success and learning moment. So we'll give everyone just a couple of minutes. I just realized that a couple of my pages didn't print out, so I'm going to grab some paper to print those out while you guys are working on this. All right. Does anyone want to share this one? You don't have to. This one I know it's a little bit harder to sometimes share our challenges. It's more fun to share successes. But does anyone want to share? All right.
No go. Everyone's like,
Cool.
no.
Christine, I'll just make you share one of yours. No, I'm just
Like,
kidding.
oh, what were my big challenges? I mean, I'm pretty FYSO. I like to think that I will be transparent about challenges. Actually, I was just sharing that one of my challenges in 2019 was I was trying to decide whether or not I should pivot, and I almost incorrectly pivoted. Or I decided that I didn't want to. And so that was like one of my challenges, was like, am I going in the right direction or not? And strategically, I'm really thankful I made a choice I did.
That's awesome. Yeah, and again, I think the reason why I like to start with retrospective is we all get so busy just with life that we don't take the time to stop. And I would encourage everyone, after you're done with an engagement with a client, or you're done, building your product, or whatever the case may be, take 30 minutes and literally sit down and write what went well, what could have been better, what did I learn that I'm going to use for next time. I did this recently with a couple engagements I did in Q1, and there were so many things that I thought I knew and they were up in here, and by writing them down, I just realized, oh, these are things that I can actually make happen now because I took the time to think about it and really reflect on it. So definitely you can learn a lot. Like you said, maybe you made the right pivot, maybe you didn't, but being able to stop and think about that is really important. So next we're going to talk about targets. So when I'm working with my clients and my organizations and we're doing goal setting, I always tell my clients that your goals need to be tied to your mission. So I know in one of these previous sessions you talked about missions, right, Christina?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So you all have been kind of building that out. So you have your mission. You want to make sure goals tie back to that. You also want to have some sort of target. So for businesses, targets are usually a revenue target. You want to make X amount of money by the end of the year. For some of the folks that are on the phone, maybe you're new. So that might not be something that you're ready or comfortable doing yet, and that's completely fine. What you can do instead is, I know you're working on, doing customer interviews, so maybe you just set the target number of customer interviews that you want to do. So that can sort of be your target. One thing to think about with targets too, and I always tell my clients this, is it can be a moving target. I will tell you right now, my revenue targets changed for this year because of COVID. Towards the beginning of the year, I had a bunch of work that I thought was going to line up. Some of that's gotten put on hold or it's been postponed. And so my revenue targets changed. None of us, I think, predicted that we were going to have a pandemic. In fact, I was talking to a client a couple months ago and I said, yeah, so that revenue target's probably not going to be what you thought it was, right? And he said, no. So that's okay. It can be a moving target, but I do think it's important to put some sort of line in the sand of saying, this is what, I'm targeting for 2020, for 2021. Again, for folks that are just starting out, I want to do 20 customer interviews. So that's something that is important. So again, this is something that I think you all can take time. I'm not expecting you within 2 minutes to be able to answer this question, but I do think it's important to think about, starting now, what is that target revenue, or what is the target number of customer interviews you're going to do? So again, I'll just give everyone a couple minutes just to kind of think through that and reflect on that. Also, I can't see the chat, so if someone is chatting me when I'm sharing my screen, for some reason I can't see it. So, Christina, I'll let you take control of the chat. Okay.
And for customer interviews, set aggressive goals. You have 5 months. And if you think about it, each question, like the question you're asking, you should probably interview 10. I mean, there have been programs that have ranged between recommending 30 customer interviews and 60 plus, depending upon the phase of your business, right? I'm just going to peer pressure you. And remember, these don't have to be long interviews. They can be 10 to 15 minutes.
And just to add on to that, I think a lot of times with customer interviews, I've done the same thing. You think that people don't want to talk to you, but people love giving feedback, especially when they're short, it's easy. People like feeling heard. And so while you might think, oh gosh, doing 50 is ridiculous, it very well probably isn't, especially if you keep it easy and kind of fun.
Exactly. I know I had a friend who did NC Ideas Accelerator program. He did 50 calls in 1 week. So, I mean, that's extreme. I think Brendan and I talked about it, and he was like, that seems like a little excessive. They did 50 in a week, and then 20, and then I think 20 another. But maybe 50, 10 a month could be a reasonable expectation, especially if you're deciding between 4 different customer groups or 5 different customer groups. Or you figure out your customer group and then you have questions about the business model. It could be very well worth it to set some lofty goals, knowing super short, super sweet, you're going to get on some calls and be like, oh, you're not my customer, but thank you so much.
Cool. So we will keep moving on to goal setting guidelines. So I love this quote, a goal properly set is halfway reached. I think if you take the time to actually sit down like we are today and thinking about goals and you write them down and you revisit them, you're halfway done. Not to say you can't, still have to do all the work to accomplish that goal, but just by taking the right amount of time to sit and think it really does go a long way. One of my dad's other great sayings is, if you write it down, it will get done. So it's almost, again, too, kind of that accountability piece. You know, you're encouraged to share with other people, especially within this cohort. It's such a great safe space to share these things. But even for me personally, I write these down and I look at my goals on a monthly basis because it keeps me accountable. I don't just put it in a drawer somewhere and then at the end of the year say, did I do all of this? So really, you know, taking the time to set those goals is really important. And that's why we're doing this today. So we'll spend a little bit of time on this and then I promise I will stop lecturing. But goals, you know, are really how an individual or an organization strategically accomplishes initiatives to deliver on their mission. So you all have these missions for your organization. Goals are how you are able to deliver on your mission. And when you review them and document them and update them on a regular basis, you're much more aligned on what you need to be doing. The organization is much more aligned. This is especially important if your organization grows beyond just you. When you're able to share goals and articulate them really well, teams understand. You know, it trickles down to different divisions and folks know the direction to be rowing in, and they're trying to accomplish that mission. So that's why they're super important, and that's why I do think it's important to take time to set goals. So many of you have probably seen this before. Goals should be, this acronym is SMART. So what we mean is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. So just to talk about each of these, what's specific, a great example of this that I always use is you could say your goal is to work out more. That's a very different type of goal than I am going to go for a walk every morning. And this is very timely because Christina just said that she's trying to do that. That actually was my example. So you can already see the difference of I'm going to work out more versus I'm going to go for a run or a walk every weekday morning. It's very specific. Measurable, part of being specific is how you are able to then measure the goal. So saying I'm going to work out more, how the heck do you measure that? Versus I'm going to go for a walk or a run, you know, 5 days a week, then you can very clearly at the end of that week say, did I go for a walk 5 days this week? And so that's how it's nice to be able to be measurable. Also, you know, it's great with, especially in marketing, and if you're setting marketing goals, there are so many great analytics and tools that you can use. So you can use Google Analytics to see what kind of traffic your website's getting. If you're doing an email newsletter, you can see what kind of metrics your emails are getting. So you can set, you know, kind of some measurable goals around that too. But sometimes, honestly, it's just, did I do it? Did I go for a walk 5 days a week or did I not? I had, at one of the companies I worked at, our COO was awesome. And every quarter he would go through all the goals for the company. And he would do green light, yellow light, or red light. So green light was, yes, you know, I'm doing well, making good progress. Yellow light was, yeah, I'm hitting some stumbling blocks. And then red light was, this isn't working. We probably need to go back and change the goal a little bit. Another great way that I personally, what I personally do is sort of meeting expectations, exceeding expectations, or not meeting expectations. So that's another nice way of saying, yeah, have I been doing this? I have gone for a walk. I'm meeting expectations. You know, maybe you're exceeding it. Maybe you're going on a walk every day and not just on weekdays. So that's kind of a nice way to measure as well. Attainable. So this one is tough because you do want to set a goal for yourself that you know you can achieve, but you also want to push yourself. As Christina just said about the target, don't just say, oh, I'm going to do 5 because I know it's easy. You do want to push yourself to try and make this, you know, something that's meaningful, but you still need to be able to attain it. Relevant. So to me, the best way to understand if this is relevant is it helping you deliver on your mission? If you can answer that question and say how this goal helps you deliver on your mission, it's relevant. Or how this goal is helping you achieve your target, it's relevant. And then time-based, the last one, is very similar to specific. So with time-based, you know, you don't want to just set a goal and say, yeah, I'm going to do this. You want to say by the end of 2020, or by the end of, you know, Q3, or by the end of September, I'm going to do this. So for me, you know, when I'm setting goals, I often do set them In December, I do my retrospective for the year, and then I set my goals for 2020. You can also do it quarterly, which we'll talk about in a second, where every 90 days you're setting goals, or rocks as they're called. And especially for lots of the folks on the call, that's probably what you want to do for right now. Setting that 90-day plan, setting your target of how many customer interviews you're going to do, and then setting sort of bite-sized goals to get there. So I'm going to pause because that was a lot of talking on my part. Are there any questions about that?
No
Awesome.
questions on SMART? We did have one question in the chat about online resources to find people in a certain category who want to give feedback. That's right. I have yet to see that. However, there are ways to make it easier. I know Brendan talked about some of them last week, and they include networking events. So it could even be networking events online. And then that way you're not even like setting up a call. You're just kind of like knocking them out one at a time. That could even be like a farmer's market, like posting up and saying, if they're like, I'm not sure our farmer's market's happening, but like if they're, they are, because I'm like, is there something in COVID? It could be worth reaching out to a farmer's market and being like, hey, do you mind if I just like post up? And I mean, farmers markets in themselves just automatically equal customer interviews, like in the industry that you're in. Other things, Facebook groups, like there's certain interactive Facebook groups based on like entrepreneurial interest. There's one really active like software as a service group, but that might not be your customer. The trick is like finding like where are your customers, potential customers that you suspect hanging out. But then also it can be tapping into your network. We now have the FYSO network. Like I know that almost every entrepreneur that did the last cohort will be willing to help you all. Like I'm willing to help you all. And so, I mean, your network is kind of the key, is like, can you ask friends to say, hey, I'm looking for women between ages 28 and 50 to ask, to do a 10-minute call. Who will help? Or even going on Facebook, like if you're, I know if some of you have jobs still, you might not feel comfortable doing it on Facebook, but if it is private, literally tap in your network. You're asking for 10 to 15 minutes. And so, but this is also a great exercise in kind of what Megan French Dunbar, she was a speaker early on in FYSO, she talked about is like, when I started out, years ago, I was super shy. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to bother people. I want to be really polite. Now this is just going to get you. Yeah, Danny, explore Facebook groups too. Facebook groups are legit. Be shameless, like be really polite. But like worst case, the worst thing that will happen is people will say no. Like I will definitely share things on Instagram if you're Danae, shameless AF girl. Like, I do this for clients. I'll be like, hey, a client's wondering, do you like this, or this? Like sometimes I'll even like put out workshop names and I'll get like 10 responses, and that's 10 pieces of data that help us pick like a better workshop name. Yeah, I hear you on the Facebook though. So we can help you. Like, and also we all can help each other too. Like, I know you have to like, not everyone's going to need to be focusing, number one on customer interviews. I feel like all of us will focus on it a little bit, but we might be able to like sporadically not burn our networks out or reach out to individuals in our network to help you. It's like just one step at a time. Like start with the like 5 interviews goal. And then at the end of every interview, ask for who else can I talk to that you'd be willing to introduce me to. So then that's like one person and then one person and then one person. So one intro equals hopefully 3 or 4 interviews.
One other thing that I will add, I've been doing a bunch of customer interviews, not for my own company, which I should, but for a client. And at the end of every interview, in addition to asking who else can I talk to, I always ask, is it okay if I email you with some follow-up questions if I have them? And usually people are always, everyone that I've asked has said, yeah, of course. Yeah, if you want to talk on the phone again, I'd be happy to. So it's a great way, because sometimes in the moment you forget to ask something, or 3 months down the line, you might want to test something with them. And it's just such a nice way to have the door open to do that. And then when you reach back out, it's, you know, kind of a welcome experience for them.
Oh, I love that. That like deserves an applause.
Excellent. Awesome. One caveat on SMART goals. So I just talked, SMART goals are great. They're really important. I too would encourage folks, when you're doing this in, you know, start sharing this within your groups, kind of challenge one another and say, yeah, that's a great goal, but is it SMART? Is it specific enough? So when I do this with clients, I'm always kind of playing devil's advocate. I'm like, that's nice, but how is that relevant to your, how is that actually going to help you achieve your mission? And so it's really important, if you are doing this on your own, to kind of play your own devil's advocate, but you guys have this great group. So as you start developing these goals and sharing them, I encourage you to challenge one another to say, yeah, but is this SMART? You know, is this specific enough? Is it relevant? Is it measurable? It's a great way to make sure they're getting good goals. The caveat being, and I love this quote, it was in an article in the Harvard Business Review, a goal can easily be SMART without being wise, which is very true. So again, you know, you don't want to just do a goal to do it. You want it to set it because it's going to help you hit your target. It's going to help you achieve your mission. So yes, it should be SMART, but don't just do silly goals. Make sure that they're actually well thought out.
I was going to ask, how many goals are like what's the right amount of goals? Because I can get goal happy.
Yes, no, that's an excellent question. So usually it's 3 to 7. So
Yes. Yeah, let me know when you want me to talk rocks, because
that's on the next slide, in fact, Christina.
Oh my gosh. Look at you, like, predicting things.
That's right. So yeah, I'll say my little spiel and then would love to turn it over to you. So I love this term rocks. And it's 3 to 7 most important things to do in the next 90 days. So they kind of take those longer term goals and make them a little bit more bite-sized. They should also be SMART. So they're still goals. They're just, when you're looking at that time relevant scale, they're 90 days. So you're not doing it for the year. For me personally, I find that the annual goals work really well. So, and with a lot of the organizations I work with and their size, the annual goals are really what they're after. But definitely for the folks on the call here, doing those 90 days is great. And really the most important thing is going back to those goals. So I look at my goals every month. I have it on my calendar. There's a reminder to review my mission, vision, values, as well as to review all my goals and seeing where I'm at against them. And at that point, it's okay to change, or say you've accomplished one of those goals because it was a 90-day goal. Set the goal for the next 90 days. So that's super important as well, to make sure that you're, you know, one of the things with SMART is it attainable? So you don't want to get goal happy and set 20, because that's just too many for any sane person to accomplish. So it just really picking, you know, what the priority is. But yeah, Christina, would love for you to talk about rocks, because I know you love rocks.
Oh my gosh, I know. I was like, yes, host this workshop and then do Vita talk about rocks. Rocks are just, so the term rock comes from this story. And I don't actually know if, like, I don't know where the source of the story comes from. I can definitely share you. I have a link to, like, Joseph on business ethics. Anyways, I can show you a source of the story so you can get more context. But I love this idea that a teacher got in front of their class and gave the students a large empty jar and then 3 bags. One was filled with their sized rocks, so like big rocks. Another was filled with gravel, and the third was filled with sand. And what we first do is you pour sand in. So like imagine me as teacher pouring sand into this jar. And sand represents like all the little things we do and want to do every day. So tweeting, texting, Facebook, Instagram, online surfing, emails, like just emails, like fires that we have to put out depending upon your role. Then you pour in the gravel, which is like some more important things like errands, chores, social occasions, maybe like client work. But now we've got like a jar that's got sand, it's got gravel, and then now it comes time for the rocks, and there's no place to put it. But rocks are the things that are really important. They're often important, but not urgent. They're the things that have the greatest impact on our jobs, our relationships, our personal well-being. So we've kind of hit on some of them. It's like exercise, like it's like the first thing that will come off people's plates. I mean, I've been there. Or things like building your brand. You know, it's so easy to get wrapped up in client work and just kind of surviving the everyday that it's easy to lose sight of something super important like this long-term brand building work. Or I don't know what it is for you. Like in this case, it's going to be, you know, your customer interviews. There's no due date, right? Like I'm not going to be like, hey, FYSO. I mean, actually, we are going to ask you to turn in your goals to try to help you with some accountability. But at the end of the day, like you're going to be held accountable to that. But customer interviews are a rock. Like they're really important. But using this analogy, if I first poured in sand and then I poured in gravel and then we finish with rocks, the rocks are not going to fit in the jar. And so the only way you're going to get your rocks done is if you start with the rocks at the bottom and then you fill it in with the gravel all around it and then the sand goes on top. So rocks. And the reason we're talking about rocks is at some point in FYSO, I am going to at least give you kind of a background on the entrepreneurial operating system. That's just a fancy term for this system that basically pulls together a lot of the best in class business tools. It's nothing new. It's just a beautifully packaged system. So I'm going to show a few of the things and the tools within that system that I really like. But one of them is how they set goals. So, and like what Jamie's teaching goes hand in hand with it. It's setting longer term goals, but then really breaking things down to like 90 days and what are your rocks. And what you will learn no matter what is, it is what Jamie said. It's like, it's 3 to 7. And if it's just you, the most rocks that I've had that I've got done successfully was maybe 5. And for most people, everyone will start with like 2, like if you're on a team, they'll start with like 2 rocks each. If you are doing this on the side, probably need 1 to 2 rocks. If that. I mean, you can go for gold, but just know that like every week you should be looking at, did I get closer to my, like, are my rocks on track or off track or like kind of neutral? And, you know, you should just be looking at that every week. If it's on track, great. If it's off track, like that's your priority.
Exactly. Kind of that meeting expectations, exceeding expectations, not meeting expectations.
Exactly.
Green light, red light, yellow light, you know, just again, writing it down and looking at it. I can't tell you how helpful it is. I mean, even with my goals, I definitely had recently where I went back to it last month. I said, I completely forgot that I needed to write this blog because I set it as a goal and it's something that helps me achieve my mission. So I need to do it. And so really that practice of, you know, reviewing your rocks and your goals is really important.
Awesome. I did want to say, just so I don't forget about it, back to that goals point on what's important. This comes up a lot too, is like vanity goals versus like goals that are truly like wise. One thing like in my business I've constantly had to look at, like, what is the right use of my time? So like, for example, I have often deprioritized Instagram tiles. I mean, I know that's very specific, but it's a vanity goal, right? Like some people have had strategies where they build a massive Instagram following and that can actually be a legitimate business strategy. But for me, when I'm trying to build a consultancy and an accelerator program, my strategy became, I'm going to build enough like nice looking Instagram tiles that people get a sense of who I am, but it would be vanity metrics to like just put a ton of time into that work compared to other types of marketing. So that being said, will I possibly try other strategies or change that strategies once my resources change? Sure. once I start making money in other places, I might invest in, you know, continuing to build that brand, you know, on Instagram. But still, like, the number of likes or the number of followers don't matter if they're not converting into customers. Customers are real. Like, paying clients is the most important thing. The other stuff, like, just ask, is this a vanity metric versus something that's really going to contribute to my bottom line?
And that's exactly, I'm so glad you brought that up, Christina, because that's part of the relevant, you know, does it tie to my mission? Does it help me fulfill my mission? And does it help me reach my target? I had a similar one where in 2019, at the beginning of the year, I said, oh, I'm going to do a blog a month. Well, yes, and you'll see in a moment, I'll share that goal with you. Yes, doing blogs is important to me because it helps me share my knowledge with others, and it's helping me achieve my mission. It's helping me with new business generation because when I have a blog, I can send it to a prospective client and say, hey, remember we talked about onboarding? Here's this blog, you might find it helpful. So it actually has led to me getting new business from it. But me doing one every month was so unrealistic for me. And I said, oh, why don't I just do this once a quarter? And it's been it's been great. And it's still achieving that higher, you know, mission and target, which is the important thing. So I love that you said vanity. I think for me, that was the exact example of, oh, I need to be doing this. Or I thought, oh, I need to have a, you know, Twitter account. Well, no one really cares about my Twitter. But on LinkedIn, they do care. So I'm kind of doubling down on that. So again, you know, it's good to have targets, but they can be moving targets. It's good to have these goals, but it's so important to go back and change and think about, are these smart? And yeah, is it a vanity one? That's totally part of that relevancy, you know, item of smart. And we have till 9:30.
Yeah,
Christina? Okay, awesome. You're good on time. So now we're going to move in. I've been doing a lot of talking. We're going to move into a little bit more about goals. So here is just a template. Again, I tweaked this from my dad. His was a little bit different and old-fashioned. So I find this personally really useful. This is built in PowerPoint because my brain thinks in PowerPoint, but you also have access to that Google spreadsheet. Do whatever you think works best. Again, for me, PowerPoint is where I'm at, but a lot of people like it in a notebook. A lot of people like it in a spreadsheet, whatever works for you. But it's a nice grid. So you have, and you can see here, I mean, I only have 5 spaces. So you can't fit a whole lot, you know, in this space. This is personal goal first. So we're going to start here. I call it kind of a warm-up exercise because everyone can think of one personal goal a little bit easier, I think, than an organization or business goal. But you see the goal is on the far left. Next to it is why. So this is, again, kind of part of that relevancy for your organization. You're going to think about how does it help you achieve your mission, or how does it help you hit your revenue target or your interview target. Your action plan. So this is super basic. Action plans can be really, really in-depth. We're not going to talk too much about action plans today because that can take up a lot of time, but it's important to have just the very basics in here. Then measurement, again, how are you going to measure this? Because how do you know if you're making progress if you don't list how you are measuring it? And then the last column is progress. So again, every month when you look at this, you go and you do red light, green light, yellow light, you do exceeding expectations, meeting expectations, not meeting expectations, you do good, neutral, bad, whatever language you want to use, that's where you would put it in your progress. So for me, my personal goal in 2019 that has continued into 2020 is to attend yoga 3 times a week. So again, it's really specific. It's attend yoga class 3 times a week. It's not just exercise more. Why am I doing that? So for me, I personally have gained strength and flexibility. It's also really important for me because it keeps me mentally sane. So very important reason for doing yoga for me. My action plan, you know, back when we were going into studios, I would kind of plan out on Sunday night or Monday and say, okay, based on the meetings I have this week, I can make this class work, or, you know, this class. So I kind of map it out on my calendar. And then measurement, it's really simple. At the end of the week, did I attend 3 classes? Did I not? In fact, this actually happened to me yesterday. It was Sunday and I was thinking about this and I said, I've only done 2. I better find some time to fit in practice. For me right now, I've been exceeding expectations only because we're all home. And so I can do it a lot more easily than before when I had to go into a studio. So you can kind of see how there's that progression of here's the goal, being able to articulate why you're doing it, how you're going to make it happen, how you're going to measure it, which again is, you know, pretty simple, and then your progress you would fill out next month after you set this goal. Again, this, especially the personal ones, these are just for you. You know, Christina said she'll probably have you share your organization goals. These ones are just for you. So whatever language you want to use, it's fine. It doesn't have to be anything fancy as long as it makes sense to you. And again, just the point of writing it down and looking at it every month, it makes it so that you're much more accountable. So I'd love to give everyone just a couple of minutes to just think about one personal goal. And it can be, you know, I always make clients do this too. And it's really nice because a lot of times they'll say, well, I'm going to spend more time with my family, which is a great thing. I'm like, okay, how are you going to do that though? You know, that's not specific enough. So how can you drill down? And so when I was talking with one client about it, he said, you know, I'm going to make sure that when I get home, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb for an hour so that I can play with my child. So that's something that, you know, he decided to set as, again, a very specific goal. All right, we'll stop there. That way we have some time to talk about our organization goals, but it's kind of a fun warm-up exercise, and it gets you used to thinking about things in a smart way, as opposed to just saying, I want to spend more time with my family, or I'm going to get more sleep. It's, okay, how are you going to actually, you know, set a smart goal to do that? Does anyone want to share? Again, you don't have to, but.
I can share. I feel like I always go, but I'm gonna go. This is something that I've been doing, and I realize that I need to probably be like adjusted a little bit, but I do a technology and media detox every day. And when we're not in FYSO, from like 7 o'clock at night until 7 o'clock in the morning, I literally like put my phone down. And that was because I realized I was like going to bed super anxious and couldn't turn off my brain. And I was just like taking in like too much news and media. So, but I think that, you know, maybe not doing it every day, but maybe just not like an hour before my bedtime, like, you know, putting down the phone and not grabbing it first thing when you wake up.
Yes, I personally struggle with this and have gotten into a bad habit of looking at my phone when I wake up, and then it sort of sets off my whole day. So I definitely understand, but I like how you were, again, very specific in the language, you know, from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. I'm not looking at social media. I'm not looking at those things. Again, just being really specific in that goal is important. And time, you know, you have the time relevancy where it's 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. You can measure it by being able the next day to say, did I look at my phone? And again, you know, goals are important. There are going to be days that just doesn't happen. There are weeks where, you know, you're not feeling well. I can't make it to yoga 3 times that week. That's okay. It's not, you're not setting goals to, as Christina was saying, have this vanity, but they're supposed to help, you know, get you moving in that right direction, get you thinking about accountability. But you have to have some grace too, right? And if you don't achieve that goal that day because you did have to look at the news, maybe something crazy was going on, that's okay. Thank you for sharing, Rosalinda.
Yeah, and shout out to Emma. One of her goals is building a stronger support community as part of her annual goals, and joining FYSO was her Q2 action.
Love that. That's perfect. And it did, like, even for me, yeah, last year it was, I'm going to build out my professional network. So I specifically looked at things, you know, that month of, okay, what networking event am I going to attend? And there are some that are better than others, right? But also you never know what you're going to get sometimes. And so, you know, like I met Christina at one of the events and it was great. You go to some other ones and they're not so great. But I think, like you said, putting yourself out there of, I'm going to expand my, you know, support group, and then making that really specific about joining FYSO. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. All right. Here's just the action plan again. So moving into our business or professional organization goals. Again, you see that the chart's the same. You have your goal on the left. Instead of why, I specifically say, how does this tie to your mission and your target that you've set? So again, if it's the customer interview target, or if it's the revenue target, you just want to be able to explain that. Again, you know, if you're just a solopreneur and you're not sharing this with the team, don't worry as much about the language. When you do have an organization that gets larger, you want to make sure that you're using language that everyone can understand. But if it's just for you personally, just make sure that it's something that makes sense to you. That's the most important thing. Your action plan, again, your measurement and your progress. So for me, it was really important, you know, in 2019, as I said, building out my professional network. In 2020, I decided that I would set the goal of participating in at least 2 speaking engagements by the end of 2020. And the at least is good too, because if I do more than that, that's awesome. But you want to have at least 2. For me, it ties to my mission because, of course, it helps with my brand awareness and then leads to clients and engagement. As Christina said, you want to get those customers in the door. But also to me, I love being able to share my knowledge with others because my vision is that all organizations can achieve stability, efficiency, and growth. So if I can help share my knowledge through speaking engagements, then that's something that I want to do and it helps me achieve my mission. So that's why it's important to me. So even if I don't get new business from certain things, it's still helping me with that mission. My action plan, so for me, you know, I was really specific about just identifying different folks to reach out to. I've also been really lucky where people reach out to me because I did all that networking last year. So, you know, you always have to start somewhere. I couldn't have done this last year because I didn't know enough people, but now I can. And, you know, the measurement's really simple. Have I participated in 2? Again, as you look at this, I'm looking at it in June. Well, I already have some that are lined up. You know, I have things that I've done. I have things that I'm planning on doing. So I'm on track. In fact, exceeding expectations. I probably will have more than 2 by the end of the year. So that's one example. Another one that I already alluded to earlier was the blog. So publishing 1 blog per quarter. And I have a friend with social, and she said, you really need to do some LinkedIn ads, which I still haven't done. So it's on the list, but that is something that I want to do. And so I mentioned it there. For me, it ties to my mission and my target because it does help me be a thought leader. Obviously, it helps me grow my brand awareness. For me, I hate being that person that just reaches out to clients and says, hey, how can I help you? I want to give them something that's helpful. So being able to send an email and say, hey, I just published this blog, I thought you might find it useful, is a great way for me to, again, make that connection. And again, it's a good way. I've had random people reach out to me recently and said, I found your blog on Google. I live over in Turkey, you know, and I want to know more. Never expected to talk to someone there that found my blog, but I guess that's SEO at work. And, you know, for me, as I mentioned, I'm an English major. So writing is really important to me personally. I've not had the opportunity to do it as much in my career as I have now that I have my own company. So for me, that's a great personal tie-in too. That's really important. For me, my action plan, I always have ideas. That's not an issue. It's literally finding the time. So sometimes I just have to block off a morning and just work on it. You know, again, really the measurement's easy. It's what have I done it? Have I written 4 blogs? And then, you know, ideally for me next year, now that I have a lot of blogs, is okay, what kind of viewership do I want to do? And so for next year, I could set a goal around, I want to have X number of views for my blogs in 2021. So that could be a goal. That's a little bit more, you know, tied into metrics. And again, right now, so far, I've been, knock on wood, meeting my expectations and even exceeding them to a certain extent. So those are my business goals that, again, there are just a couple of them. I have, I think, 3 more. So I think I have 5. And I look at them every month, and it's just a nice check-in for me of, yeah, am I doing this? Am I doing the legwork of the action plan to make sure that I'm reaching these goals? So again, I'm going to turn it over to you. We have some time. So I do want to give folks a bit of time just to think through, okay, what are, and again, as Christina said, do you want to do rocks? Set it for the next 90 days. It doesn't have to be through the end of the year. It doesn't have to be for the next, 18 months. It can just be for the next 90 days, and set some business goals. And really do, again, I think this column, the column about, how does it tie to my mission? People will just skip over, but it's so important because, again, is it a vanity goal or is it not? Is it actually helping you achieve your mission?
Yeah, I love that. What's nice is the EOS function. I mean, it kind of just has spots for your rocks. I have seen that they have like rock planners, but I like that it's like succinct enough.
And it's not huge. Yeah, and so you don't have a ton of space, so you can't be super explicit. Again, with action plans, sometimes an action plan might need to have a separate document. There's a whole process you might have to put in place, in order to move forward. But this just gives you an easy way to say, yep, this is how I'm going to accomplish this goal. So for your exercise, and again, this is just a start, but I want you all to think about the goals that you want to achieve for your organization. Either, again, you can do by the end of 2020, or just start with rocks and just do the next 90 days. And as Christina said, especially if this is like a side gig for you, 2 is plenty. So don't feel like you have to do a ton. So we'll give everyone a few minutes because I do want to make sure we have time for if folks want to share, and then to talk about some next steps. And I think, Christina, you probably have some things to say at the end.
Definitely. Oh, great. I just got a question. Is there time for questions?
Of course.
Definitely. Do you want to go ahead and do now?
Yeah, if anyone has questions now, we can do that. We can save time too.
I have a question. So part of what I've loved about the goals that you've laid out is that they are attainable. So when you're talking about a quarterly blog, like something like that where it is like very attainable. Do you have any words of wisdom around like setting attainable goals for the optimists in the group who like to think that they can do a whole lot more than they actually can?
Truth, that's truth. Preach, Danny.
That is an excellent question. And again, I was also very optimistic in the past, especially with the blog one is such a perfect example. I was like, I have plenty of time to write a blog per month. And it's like, no, you don't. So it really is thinking about that A in SMART, so the attainable. And again, some folks in the room, you might have to skew more on attainable in terms of scaling down. So if you are more optimistic, kind of take a step back and think, is that really feasible? Can I really do that? Whereas some of you that maybe are more pessimistic might say, oh yeah, I'm going to do 1 a year. But it's like, is that really enough? So you have to know your own personality, I think, a little bit, and think about it in those terms. And again, think about the time it's going to take. But the other nice thing is you can always change it. So if you are like me and you set something that's really lofty and then you realize a couple months in, nope, that's not going to work. That's why you review it monthly, so you can go back and do it. It's always good to at least start and put, you know, a stake in the sand, because you can always go back and change it. I hope that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just that, especially that piece of just like being, maybe like grounding yourself back into like the actual, like, okay, actually how much time is this gonna take, is probably like very, very, very helpful to, as far as quantifying what is actually attainable for you. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I think too, a lot of it, and I know Christina, you've talked about this in the past, is thinking about what you want for your personal life. You know, yes, I mean, I could write a blog, but I don't want to be doing that all the time because I want to have a life and spend time with my husband and my family and things like that. So thinking about that too, I think is really important. And one of the things that I've always really struggled with is work-life balance. And now that I have my own consultancy, it's so much better. And part of it is because I do set more realistic goals and boundaries for myself. So that's really important. So we'll give everyone a couple more minutes, I think, Christina.
Yeah.
And if there are more questions, feel free to ask. I already have my goals, so I don't need to, to do this exercise. But I actually have on my calendar, I think next Thursday, or it might be this Thursday, to review my goals. So. I see some folks still working, which again, the idea is that kind of learned how to do this today, but I know certain people kind of have this up in their head already. Other people like to stop and think about it for a while. So it's not like you have to have them done today by any means, and definitely encourage you all to work within your cohort and to talk to folks about it. And again, to play that devil's advocate of, is this smart? You know, is it specific enough? Is it something that's measurable? Is it relevant? Definitely attainable is a good question to ask for other folks too, to kind of keep you honest. Am I trying to bite off more I can chew? Or, you know, maybe I should be more ambitious with my goal. So it's great to kind of talk about these as well. Does anyone want to share any of their goals? I know Christina said she might ask you to share all of them at some point in the future, but anything that someone wants to share now?
Everyone's like, no.
Well, it's a lot too, because it's not a lot of time that I've given you to do this. So especially for the folks in the room that like to really think and process and sleep on it, I think that makes a lot of sense. But
I mean, one thing we're working on that is almost complete is getting a hemp certified as hemp growers. And the only thing we're missing at this point is just the clones that have COAs that are NC compliant. So we just have to find the growers. So I literally just reached out to a ton of people because the last COAs we got were not compliant. And so that's like going to be the difficult part, but it's definitely a big goal because we need plants to grow.
So reaching out to growers, is there sort of a number that you can put around that, or sort of a date of when you want to reach out to growers by, or something like that?
It will probably be a number per day because there's a giant list on NC State on their extensions website.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say like at least 5 a day. And if we run out of names to email, then find 5 more.
Yeah. I think that's great and such a good example of, I'm going to email at least 5 a day for the next however many days. It would be a good thing to add. Because that's, again, really specific. It's very actionable. It's very measurable because you can say at the end of each day, did we email 5? So you can kind of see how that SMART really comes into play.
For sure.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for presenting this. It's very helpful.
Yeah. Anyone else want to share one of theirs? Okay, I won't force anyone.
Feel there.
Yeah, I really do feel like that teacher in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
You're doing great. I know it's so funny because now that you're like leading, I'm like, oh, this is so great. And then when I'm hosting, I'm like cracking jokes and I can kind of see a few people laugh. And then I'm like,
well, it's also, I have to say, it's really hard to do things on Zoom. While Zoom is wonderful and I love it, it's very different than being in a room when people are nodding at you. And you can, because even right now, I only have a couple people up on my grid. So
yeah, it's so real. And it's not, you're also missing that energy. Like, say what you want. You can feel people's reactions. Like you can kind of feel like, are people actually vibing? Whereas like head nods on a tiny screen is just like.
But thank you for everyone doing head nods. I appreciate it. So just talking about next steps. So I will share a quote, which is from Atomic Habits. Has anyone read it that's on the call? Atomic Habits? Okay.
We're going to add to the book list.
Yes. So it's by James Clear. He actually also has this newsletter. Someone had recommended it to me, and it's called 3-2-1, and he sends it every Thursday. And it's 3 ideas, 2 quotes, and 1 question. So 3 ideas are usually excerpts from his books. The 2 quotes are from other folks, and then the 1 question at the end. And it's such an easy and great newsletter. It's one of the few that I read religiously. So you can definitely check it out. I'll put the link in the chat or something after this. But one of the things he says is goals are good for setting a direction, but systems are best for making progress. So he kind of knocks on goals a little bit. And at first I was like, no, I love goals. Why is he knocking on them? But it's a really great point because again, as I said earlier, a goal properly set is halfway achieved. But you actually have to do the work to achieve the goal. So for the example that was just given, you can't just say, oh, I'm going to email 5 people a day. You actually have to do it. What are the systems to do that? Okay, it was Outlook or Gmail or whatever email system you use. But actually putting in the time and thinking about the systems or the processes in order to do it. Another great quote from my dad, I told you I would be quoting him a ton, but he has always said, strategy is great, but execution is crucial. So that's exactly what we're doing with goals. You can set your strategy, set your plan, but if you can't execute on it, what's the point? You can set lofty and beautiful goals, but if you don't do anything about it, why did you, spend the time setting the goals? All of that being said, taking the time to think about goals and think about, making them smart and making them relevant and attainable and all of those things really does allow you to get set on the right path of being able to achieve those goals, being able to go back every month and looking at these goals and saying, how am I doing? Red light, green light, yellow light is really important. So I always like to bring this up because I do love James Clear, but also it's important to remember you can't just set these and put them in a drawer and never revisit them. So my next steps, all my clients know me that I'm very good about always sending next steps. So your next steps, again, I know folks take time to process. This was I did a lot of talking at you. But really, I would encourage you to think about what these goals are, both personal and professional, and then create, fill out the grid. Again, it can be in PowerPoint, it can be in Excel, it can be in your notebook. It doesn't matter, whatever works for you. But really fill out that grid, what the goal is and why you're doing it, the action plan, thinking about what your action plans are. And then again, reviewing these at least on a monthly basis. So definitely with your cohort, your learning circle, I think starting next week, you guys are meeting, Christina. So that's a great time. And again, really be that devil's advocate too, and question your fellow FYSO folks and say, yeah, that's a great goal, but is it attainable? Is it, is it specific enough? So that's a great time to do that. And then just, make those adjustments as needed. Again, every month I review these and I make tweaks. And it's just a great way to, again, make sure that you're staying on track, especially for 90-day goals for your rocks. You want to be doing it weekly, really looking at those. And I think that was all that I had. So I'm happy to take any questions. And then I have here, and I know Christina has all my information, but I have my website and my email address. I love this stuff. So if anyone just wants to talk with me one-on-one, happy to do a phone call or something like that. Also, I'd be happy to do any customer research. I don't know if I'm the target demographic for anyone, but I'm always happy to give my opinion on things. I'm a very opinionated person. So happy to do that as well. I do send out a quarterly newsletter that I literally just started in March. It wasn't a goal for 2020, but it has now become one. And so if you go to my website, in my footer, you can just sign up for that. So feel free to do that. Thank you guys, though. Are there any questions or other things I can address? All right.
No thoughts, questions, last minute things? Well, okay, I have a question for you all. What surprised you, or like what were your big takeaways from what you learned during Jamie's session that maybe you haven't picked up on in past goal setting sessions?
I'll go. I never heard about the rocks thing, so I really liked that, and it really made sense. And I even super dorkily drew a little illustration. So I don't know, that kind of helped, because I think that I am definitely one of those optimistic people where I just have all of these goals and a lot of them just float around in my head. So to be able to kind of put them into the spreadsheet will be really helpful too. So thank you, Jamie.
Awesome, thank you.
I think for me, the idea of coming back to the goals, because I've written tons of goals and I've been like, okay, cool. And then a year later have haven't looked at them, said, oh, this was a neat thing that happened. And then said, oh, that was a goal. Or, oh, that thing that should have been a goal, I should have been looking at and making it accountable. So that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think that goes back to, you have to find what works for you, whether it's PowerPoint, sometimes people are great with notebooks and go back to it. For me, my notebooks, I kind of just take notes in, and then if I need to reference it, I go back to it. But having something that I have saved on my computer as a PowerPoint, for me, is just really nice to go back to. And two, I have to have that calendar reminder for myself. So it's a recurring reminder, at the end of every month, go look at my goals, go look at, my mission, making sure I'm being true to that. So finding those systems that enable you to check your goals is super important as well.
What you said, changing your process can be so tricky. Because everyone's like, oh, how do you do it? What's the one answer? I mean, and with everything with FYSO, it's there's no one way to build your business. And it's just there's no one way to run it. I once heard a professional organizer speak, and she had been doing it for 20 to 30 years. And she was like, yeah, you want to know what a good professional organizer does? They work with the client to figure out what works for them, because they can come in and like, I mean, operations is just like cleaning a house in many ways. It's like, you can go in and clean it up and make it all pretty and set all these goals. But if you don't have the system that's going to work for you, and sometimes it's like dumbing it down. Like it's truly like, what is the random thing that's finally going to stick that you can hold yourself accountable to and like do it for the long term?
Yeah. I have a perfect example of this actually. And I always, every time I say this, I'm so ashamed to admit it, but I'm an operational strategy person. I keep track of my time in Excel because it's what works for me. So all these tools, all these systems, people are always like, oh, how do you keep track of your time? Do you use Harvest? Do you use Clockify? You know, there's all these tools. And for me, it's just Excel. Like I have it on my desktop. I can just easily pull it up and just add my time in. When I need to do reports, it's really easy for me to just add everything up. So again, it's whatever works for you. I mean, you would think that I would have some awesome system that I use, but this is what works for me. It's quick, it's efficient. I tried changing it recently and I was like, why would I change this? So that's one example of just sometimes you have to find what works.
Right. That's so real. Whereas I use Toggle. I'll put it in the
Toggle. Yes, that's the other one that's really good. Toggle, Harvest. Those are the ones I hear a lot.
Yeah. It makes really good reports at the end. It's like, ooh. Anyone else?
I'll throw out there just, I feel like I put a lot of rigor into my business goals, but it was really good, not that I always complete them, but it was a really good reminder to do that for your personal goals as well, that I totally don't do that ever. And so that was just a really good reminder as well.
Awesome.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is, I mean, I have done it with mine because it's so easy to get busy with life, but if you actually set goals, you remember to take care of your personal self too.
Oh, balance.
Yes.
Incremental changes can make balance better.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so freaking much, Jamie. This is so great. If no one else has any other comments or questions, we'll let you.
All right, I will sign off. Yeah, and again, feel free to email me. I'm always happy to reach out to me on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to chat with you all and keep in touch, and good luck. You're in awesome hands with Christina, and I can't wait to hear more about your ideas and see what you all do.
Awesome.